On the family vacations of my childhood, back in the day, my dad used to pile us all into a Ford Country Squire station wagon. You might remember that one. It had the wood look paneling along each side, and he would drive us from our home in Kentucky to places like New Mexico and Colorado and Wyoming. And counting my brother and my sister and myself and our 4 stepbrothers and sisters, there were 7 of us kids in that country squire. The 2 littlest girls sat between my dad and my stepmother in the front seat, 3 of us kids in the middle seat, including the chump on the hump, and then there was a way back. And some of you have had station wagons like this, with a way back with seating for 2 more. And maybe you had vacations like this, vacations in the days before seat belts, in the days before reliable air conditioning, so that your legs stuck like glue to the seats, the hot seats, constant squabbling with your brothers and sisters, turf wars over whose leg touched whose, fights over Mad magazines and comic books, and whose turn it was to sit in the cozy, fueled clubhouse of the way back. One year, we had just stopped at a rest area, piled out, gotten snacks and so on, and loaded up again, and my dad drove on a good 30 miles before my stepmother uttered this guttural gasp. "Where's Mark?" Craning our necks, we looked to the left, we looked to the right. He wasn't in the front seat, that was the little girls. He wasn't in the middle seat. He wasn't even in the way back. And my stepmother let out a scream like no scream I've ever heard. My dad, whipping that country squire around on a dime, floored it back to the rest stop. And you, if you've ever been a parent, you know, or you can imagine how they felt. Now, today, my stepbrother Mark is one of the finest, most stand-up individuals you would ever want to meet, but back in that time, he was the rascaliest of kids. He was the one who was always stirring up trouble, mocking, bullying, teasing. We should have realized it was quiet, too quiet. But the Mark that we found 30 minutes later, so he'd been alone for an hour. 30 minutes later at that rest stop, this little frame, heaving sobs, was a shell of his former self. And actually, he was never quite the same again. In that short hour, he traveled to hell and back. And so had his mom. I can only imagine how my stepmother must have felt. The rest of us safe and sound in the country squire, but Mark in danger, afraid, lost, and returning to find her sobbing child at that rest stop. Can you imagine the infinite relief, the pure bliss of that reunion? Like my stepbrother Mark, we get lost too. Maybe not marooned at interstate rest stops, but most certainly we lose our way on the path of life. We wander down roads that we definitely should not wander down, roads that take us far away from ourselves, our souls, and who God made us to be. We find ourselves hurting others, sometimes even blowing up our lives. We human beings, every one of us, can get lost in a million different ways. And we know all too well, cities and countries can get lost too. And then that moment comes when we discover the correct path again. By God's grace, someone comes along and pulls us towards safety, or we come upon some landmark that helps us correct our course and find a way forward, and everything changes. Like those famous words from the most popular hymn of all time, Amazing Grace. I once was lost, and now I'm found, was blind, and now I see. We feel in our bodies the truth of those words. And now I think of what joy God feels when God finds what was lost, namely us. And that's the story that Jesus wants to tell in Luke's gospel today in two brief parables, two lost and found stories. Stories about how God searches for us relentlessly when we lose our way. And in the first story, Jesus asks, which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders. You can just see the icon of Jesus, right? Lamb on his shoulders, and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together all his friends and neighbors, saying to them, rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost. And in the second story, the same thing. Jesus asks, what woman having 10 coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost. In each of these two stories, as a lost sheep in the first one and a lost silver coin in the second one, we're meant to see ourselves as the thing lost. And God in the first story is the shepherd, and God in the second story is the woman. And each time they search relentlessly until we're found. And I love how in both stories they end with a party, with rejoicing to find what was lost. In both parables, we see God searching extravagantly for what is lost. And yet to readers, or I should say listeners in Jesus' time, this would have sounded absolutely crazy. What shepherd in his right mind would leave unprotected 99 sheep in the wilderness to go find one that was lost? That's insane, impractical. And this impractical story is meant to arrest the attention of the listeners so that they know that something big is happening here when it comes to love and care and concern for the lost. And what woman would turn her house upside down to find one lost coin and then throw a party that would surely cost more than the one coin that she had lost and found in order to celebrate its discovery? Again, extreme, extravagant behavior. These stories are over-the-top examples of the total love that God feels for us all the time. And Jesus' stories tell us that when we're lost, God will do anything to find us again, and then rejoice. And again, I say rejoice when we're found. And again, these stories are about us, about when we get lost and when we get found. There's not one person in this room, there's not one person in the whole wide world who doesn't get lost or is beyond the love of God. Nothing that we can do can stop God from loving us, although I'm sure that we regularly break God's heart with some of the choices that we do make. And at some point or another, each of us is going to get profoundly lost and need finding. But in telling these two lost and found stories, Jesus is singling out two particular groups, the Pharisees and the scribes. These are the people who were the representatives of organized religion at that time, religious law, and they are disapproving of Jesus at this moment in time because he's dining with sinners and tax collectors. After all, these people were sort of the lowest rungs of society. They were considered the enemy. And here's Jesus singling them out for special attention. And yet, these stories about the lost coin and the lost sheep, they're also about lowly people. Shepherds were low down on the social scale, and so were women. But we see that God pours out the most attention on those who are the most seemingly insignificant, and the most lost. And we are called to do the same. So I'm thinking one last time about what it feels like, what God feels like when God finds us, when God finds each of us. Because no matter how lost we are, and just think about a time when you felt utterly lost as we ever get, God is searching for ways to find us with no distinctions, because there is no us and them. There is no tax collectors and sinners over here and better behaved people over there. In God's eyes, we are all equally beloved. All of us sinners, all of us in need of God's grace and mercy. And the more lost we are, the harder God searches to find us, turning the house upside down, sweeping and sweeping for the lost coin, that clink of the sound of that lost coin, trying a million different tricks to get our attention, putting people in our path. You've had that experience. Stirring up seemingly chance occurrences. There's so many ways that God is constantly searching and may be searching for you right now. Just waiting to find you. Just waiting to throw a party. Just waiting to rejoice. Amen.